welcome to our conversation about women in power. We're glad to have you. Before we begin, would you mind telling us your name and a bit about who you are?
My name is Francine Farber, and I'm really excited to be part of this project today. I'm a relative newcomer to Fresno. I've been here for 14 years with my husband. We moved here from the East Coast, from Connecticut and New York, to be with our daughter and her husband and their 2 children who are now in college. We live around the corner from them, and we both were retired when we moved here, so we've gotten heavily involved in community activities. In fact, I like to say that I'm a full-time community volunteer, and I really am. When I stopped working, I was concerned that I wouldn't have enough to do because I'm kind of a workaholic, but I'm doing so many different things here that I don't have to worry about that anymore. I'm really involved in many different activities here, including the League of Women Voters of Fresno, Reading and Beyond, an organization that works with inner city families from cradle to career, the Behavioral Health Board of Fresno County, and other activities.
So, in a sense, just kind of on the face of it, looking at all of those programs you're involved with, all of the work that you do out in the community, people would probably describe you as a very, very powerful woman. What drives you?
Well, first of all, the word power puts me off a little bit, and I prefer to call it leadership because that's more collaborative to me. And the older I've gotten, the more important I realize it is to work in a collaborative manner rather than from a top-down manner, which is what power kind of implies to me. What was your question again? I lost it.
Well, actually, that led to a more interesting question about, which term do we use, power versus
leadership?
Yeah, leadership, which is an interesting question in and of itself. But I just asked kind of, what drives you?
I see. Well, when I was very little, like 5 or 6 years old, I was found to be musically talented, and I did extremely well, and I was pushed to be the best, and I was pretty good. I was very good, and I think this, both having it within me to be a good musician and to be good, and then to have my family, especially my dad, persist in asking me and insisting that I always do very well, both musically and academically, I think just it must have fit my personality to some degree. And so I think since very early childhood, I've been a person who is competitive, who wants to do well, who in fact does pretty well in most things, and very task committed, and always want to get involved in things and not sit on the sidelines. So it comes from a variety of courses, but it started very early in my life, really.
So it may be hard to define like a specific moment in your life, because it did start so early, this self-belief, this kind of motivation to do so much. But what would you say, like what have maybe been some kind of like formative experiences that got you on the road that you're on today with your, all of your community involvement, thinking, in terms of, leadership being more valuable in some ways?
Mm-hmm. Well, I almost accidentally, through just taking a chance course in journalism as an English elective in high school, I then became the editor of my high school paper, and so I was in definitely a leadership role there. And then I went on to become the first woman editor-in-chief of the newspaper of the City College of New York, which was a big deal in those days. It was in the 50s, and there were not many women editors-in-chief. And then I went on to become a school psychologist and an educator, and I was able to help a severely impaired youngster with severe cerebral palsy leave the isolated setting that he was in a school for severely handicapped children. I found something in him that was very special. I found that even though he was severely physically handicapped, he wasn't mentally handicapped, and I was able to bring him back into the regular school setting, which was not done in those days. And he succeeded so well that he went on to college. He graduated from Berkeley And many years later, just a few years ago, I was in touch with him and found out he had gotten married and divorced, had a child, had gotten married again, and was having a fairly successful life. So that was really important to me. And then I've had a lot of successes with the volunteer work in the community, mostly because a lot of people just don't want to do it. And I want to do it. I really do want to do it. And I want it to be successful. So that's worked in my favor too.
So, you know, a lot of people don't want to do it. Do you find that you just kind of naturally step in? Do you seek out certain types of volunteer opportunities, or?
I do. I mean, when I see an emptiness or a space, I want to fill it somehow. And something like that just happened. I was at a meeting run by an organization that I'm part of last week, and the leader was not able to be present. And I could see that things were not happening because nobody was acting as the leader. And I just stepped in and I self-appointed myself to just kind of take charge and make things happen. It's not that I had to do so much, but some things had to be pulled together to get the opportunity going, and I was able to do that because I had the experience in doing it previously, and I saw that there was a need for it, and I just feel bound to fulfill a need when I see it.
So a lot of women in that same scenario, I'm guessing that there are quite a few people at this meeting who could have done just the same thing. But there is sort of sometimes a reluctance to step up to the plate when there's a need that you see. What do you think gives you the strength to do that? Because again, so many women do have a lot of background, a lot of skills, but maybe afraid to, for whatever reasons, really go for it.
Yeah, well, I've been fortunate enough to be successful in some similar undertakings, so I guess that has given me the confidence to just step up, especially since I've been retired, I think, and that I don't feel people are judging me as I did when I was an employee and I had a boss. Here I'm kind of my own boss, and if I see a need, I'll just try and take care of it. And I'm not so concerned about what other people think anymore.
Were there specific moments from your past where you really felt as though you were being judged, or where it might have been more, more problematic to really take charge?
Yes, I've been in situations when I was employed. I can think of several very unhappy situations where I felt I was being judged and judged unfairly, and it was not a good feeling. I didn't like it at all, and I think if I had a different kind of career, maybe that wouldn't have happened. I had an experience when I was newly married and living in Illinois, across the river from St. Louis, and I had just graduated from college as the first female editor-in-chief of my college newspaper, and I applied for a job on a newspaper out there, and after I auditioned for it by writing a story and rewriting a story and so forth, I was called back the next day and told that I was the best person for the job, but they really wanted a man. And that kind of killed my newspaper career. And I think if I had gotten that particular job, and of course they couldn't get away with that today, but that was in 1955 or 56, I believe, and that's the kind of thing that happened to women. So I think if I had gotten that job on the newspaper, I probably would have stayed in the newspaper field because I truly love writing, and I would have had a different kind of life experience. So I married a newspaper man instead of working on one.
So obviously that experience shaped you. Do you feel that gender and gendered expectations have shaped the way that you go about your leadership within the community?
Especially previously, but not quite as much today. I feel much freer in that regard today, maybe because of the societal changes, or maybe again just because I'm older and retired and I don't care what you think so much anymore. But certainly when I was working and interacting with people, especially groups of men, I think I behaved differently and in a slightly less assertive manner than I would today. Mm-hmm.
So it sounds as though you're really enjoying your retirement then.
Well, to my surprise, I am, because I was very fearful about it. I held off retiring until I kind of had to retire, because my husband had been retired for a couple of years and he wanted me to leave so that we could be together more. And I think I was afraid that I would stagnate and that I wouldn't have anything to do and I'd sit around the house all day. And that is hardly the case. I'm probably, not quite, but almost as busy as I was in a different kind of way from when I was working. So that's pretty good. I'm happy about that.
So can you tell us about some of the projects that are inspiring you right now?
Well, the League of Women Voters is about to start a centennial celebration in 2020, which will be the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage in the United States. So we're working on getting a lot of organizations and agencies in Fresno and this region to participate in that and to have a year-long celebration. So I'm very much involved. I'm taking a leadership role in that. My husband and I have a program called Steve's Scholars in memory of our older son, who passed away unexpectedly at the age of 42, and we work with a middle school in the most underprivileged zip code in all of California and one of the most underprivileged zip codes in the entire United States. We work with students there to motivate them to stay on track with their grades and with attendance and taking the right college prep courses and doing community services so that when they graduate from high school, they'll get a scholarship from us. And then we also have another project in memory of our younger son who also passed away called Mike's Books, where we've opened 2 libraries in housing authority, low-income housing complexes, and we're very happy about that. I'm on the Fresno County Behavioral Health Board, and I play an active role there. And I'm also with an organization called Reading and Beyond. I've been the vice chair of the board there for a number of years, and we work with inner city families actually in the same area that our scholarship program is involved in, to give families an opportunity to have better lives from working with them starting from cradle to career. So that's a kind of a busy schedule.
So this may be kind of, it's maybe kind of a strange question to ask after you've accomplished so much. But if you were to give advice to your younger self about how to be a leader as a woman, what kind of advice would you give?
Well, I would say don't be afraid to be strong, especially today. I think people will respect you for it. I think you have to temper it just as a man would and a man should. Temper it with an assessment of what you need to do in an interactive way to make what you want to do possible. I mean, you have to be sensitive to what the situation requires, and then you have to decide whether that's what you want to do, whether you want to play it that way or not. And I would say, follow your instincts. I think following your instincts is a good thing to do. You have to look around and see how things go, and you can always determine by the results if you need to modify what you're doing. If it's not working, change it. You can change it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming and speaking with us today. We look forward to hearing much more from you in the future, hopefully, and definitely looking forward to seeing all of the projects that you're touching off with in the community. Thank you so much.
And thank you. I've enjoyed being part of this.